So, hi, Stephen. It's great to have you here and to have a chat with you about the upcoming program that we're going to do. So, we're going to do a advanced facilitation training called the Essence of Facilitation in New Zealand. And I think it's all about the book, The Essence of Facilitation, isn't it? There we go. Got the book here. We both have it.
Yeah,
And it's all about distinction. So really becoming clear of what are some elements that are really important to facilitate a group. And I want to know, like, what is like, for example, one of the distinctions that you found the hardest when you did your training?
yeah, certainly the area of completion comes to mind as one of the distinctions that's been the most difficult for me in my training. And I can remember trying to complete a session I'd facilitated on my training program, and I kept having to rewind it and have another go at trying to facilitate the group to this into this distinction of being complete. And I kept cocking it up by adding bits extra on and things that weren't complete. There was a point where people needed their lunch, and so they just got up and left me to finish off completing the session. And it was challenging to be in the hot seat and to be coached. And yep, you're nearly there, Steve. Give it another go. And the breakthrough moment came for me when I got out of my chair and stood up. And I think standing, it sort of aligned my physical being with the earth underneath, and I felt more present that way and less in my head. And just a sentence to complete the session and to thank everyone for their contributions. And that was it. And I think what I realized is it wasn't so much the words that I was using, it was the energy of completion. And we could now move on to whatever was going to be next and to be lunch. So one of the great things about the distinction of completion is that you're tying off all of the loose ends from that particular piece you've done, and it's linked to the purpose. You had a particular purpose you're trying to achieve, and you know that that's been achieved for everyone in the group. And sometimes if you get to agreement in a group and you haven't quite tied down, who's going to be responsible for it, when's it going to be delivered by, some of those action item things. If you don't get those done right as part of your completion, then, it gets a bit nebulous as to what's going to happen next with that thing. So you don't want to carry those loose ends forward. And the other thing to look out for around completion is sometimes groups will have a a thing called cheap closure, and people will just agree with the first idea it comes up with, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, that's it," and I can agree with that, but they won't necessarily align with it. And while they might agree with it intellectually, they won't necessarily put their heart and soul into making that particular agreement happen. So sometimes you can see that people agreeing with the ideas, but it doesn't necessarily light them up as something that you can tell is really passionate about. And certainly as a facilitator, you can feel it energetically when there's that moment when you know that things have come to that moment of completion, and you can close it off. And it creates a space for the future to emerge. And that's really powerful for something new to start emerging from the completion that you've created.
Yeah,
How about you, Simone?
it's
Yeah.
what did I find challenging, or what do I find
Yeah, well,
about
any comments on
completion?
completion and maybe this
Yeah,
relation to purpose? Mm.
yeah, I like completion a lot. It's such a powerful distinction, and I feel like, yeah, like you said, the group can move on. There's like an energetic release. You can really feel in the group they're like, oh, they're ready to go to the next thing, and also I feel like what often happens when completion isn't happening in meetings, that people walk out and then you have the water cooler conversations. People just keep on talking about it, but outside of the meeting, which then creates
Mm.
sort of undercurrents almost, because things that should be discussed with everyone is now discussed between two or three. So they are moving further forward, but the rest doesn't. And then conflict can happen and all sorts of things. So
Mm.
making clear as a facilitator at the end of a meeting to have a little bit of time to ask, what needs to be said for us to feel complete at this point, and they might say we're not complete and we need to have
Mm.
another meeting about it, but that's good to know as a facilitator. So yeah, and the importance of the clarity of purpose, like you wouldn't know if you're complete if you don't know where you want to get to. So purpose, you basically set an intention on where you want to go as a group. what is it you want to achieve.
Yeah, it's another one of those important distinctions that
That
we'll
is
be
another
working on
one.
in the stage two. Yeah,
Absolutely. And that sets the journey and the sort of the gives the dot on the map. This is where we want to go. And you don't know that you achieve that if you don't be explicit about it. You could end up anywhere if you're not very clear about what the purpose is. And I was just coaching another facilitator, and I was saying, like, the whole group actually helps you to get complete if the whole group knows what the purpose is, because it gives like this focus in consciousness that brings everyone to that one point. And so you can create completion together by making a purpose very clear at the beginning.
yeah. And if you've got a clear purpose, you can also know that, oh, yeah, we've ticked that off. We've got that done now, and you can see people have put the work in and they've created whatever they need to do to achieve that.
Yeah.
And two very important distinctions. There's a bunch of
Yeah.
others we'll be working on with these wonderful facilitators coming on the Stage Two training program.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
getting
Maybe just
excited about that.
and maybe just to name a few to give a bit of teasers. There's a distinction is around culture. It's around powerful speaking and listening. It's around being with and intimacy and connection, and also intentionality.
And power with is another really important one, which power is in place in groups, and it's an important one for a facilitator to work with.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And so you have a chance to find out or practice certain interventions to help a group to achieve those distinctions, and you learn how to see in a group when it's missing.
Yes.
I think it's a bit of the magical invisible tools of a facilitator. There's like an internal checklist. What's missing here in this group that's actually stopping the group from moving forward, and it gives you some really valuable skills to navigate that.
Yeah, and certainly the trick sometimes is you might notice something's missing, like trust might be missing. It's like, wow, as a facilitator now, how do I generate trust in the group? If it comes up as something in the conversation, or what's happening, it's like, right, what's a process or an activity, or maybe even just naming what you notice is missing can galvanize the team into shifting its awareness around that and changing its behavior. Or maybe you might go to the group culture, which is another distinction you look at working with, and is there something missing in the culture that might help build more trust, or do people need to be living into one of the culture items that they've created in their discussion around how they're going to work together. So that really useful technique to sort of scan for what you feel is missing, and then how do you generate this? And that's that advanced level facilitation work that we work on in Stage Two.
Yeah, so exciting to work with Stephen. We've both been facilitation trainers for a long time, but we never actually worked together. So this is our first
Yes.
program where we work together, and it will happen in New Zealand in just over a month, I think around is the 9th to the 13th of
Yes.
December. But we will put a link to more information in the comments below, and just comment or reach out to us if you have any questions
And there's also the
about,
book,
yes.
that you can download off the website. So you can find the link there on zenergyglobal.com under our books, and have a read.
Cool. Thanks so
Awesome, right?
much.
Good to chat.
Bye.
Bye for now.